Sojuzni Resmiev, Republik, Sojurovnik, Spolenta, ne wieki, wielkie Reus, das Jahr wir jetzt auf den Jewelenjahr darf, wenn Molev Sowiecki Soyuz Slavas.
Oh, good God, Soviets, please, Soviets, shut up, please, that's so annoying. You just lost more tanks to bogs than you did enemy fire. Let that sink in, because you're not going to get any reprieve in the next list against Rich H, who is running the Totenkopf division with a select few number of tanks that are all elite in one form or another, and he's also bringing in a rather extravagant Sturm Tiger. Now let's just pause for a second to take a look at these tanks. They're beautifully painted. They were done by the Battlefront staff themselves, apparently, and the guy's got good taste. I mean, these things are just drool-worthy. Nonetheless, as per standard, since we hadn't had a match in this tourney yet that used a free-for-all standard, we're using free-for-all. It's a fair fight scenario. And because we both have always attack, we had to roll off of this. I do believe us, the Sovietskis, get to attack in this game like we did in most of the other ones. I really can't underscore just how beautiful his miniatures actually were. I thought they were fantastic, and they have set my standards just a little bit higher for the next batch of miniatures that I'm going to do, which I do believe are some Fallschirmjägers. We go ahead and place our objectives out as wide as we can. I've got kind of the raw end of it, having an open area to have to put all the objectives in, or at least they're going to be very difficult to defend, and on his end, I did the best I could with it. The objective on the northern end is a little harder to defend because it's out there in the open, but the other one is out there right in front of the hedgerow, which should be easy to get to because at least I don't have to make a bog check to get to it. In this matchup, it's actually rather strange. I have less platoons than him, but I have far more units. It's just interesting to point out. But this time I have started to use some of the things that I've learned in the past games regarding hidden checks and trying to develop a proper tank aggressive strategy or an aggressive armor strategy. And in this one, I go ahead and put the SU-122s on the southern end of the board with the short group of T-3485s, all 5 of them, and they got the CIC with them, or at least they will have the CIC with them. And on the northern end is the huge gaggle of 10 T-3485s with dead off, and it's got the Katyushas up there, which up until this point in the tourney have done jack diddly for me. They don't even manage to consistently pin anything. So I go ahead and put the Spetsnaz on the southern end of the board, wiggling their way on the other side of that river, and move them into the woods through a Recce move. Hopefully, since I lost so many tanks the last game through just bog checks, that he can have to be forced into assaulting them as per some of his special rules, and then hopefully lose a couple of them through bogs. Despite the +1 for finishing first, we actually rolled off a couple times trying to see who was going to go forward first, and immediately I win the first turn and I start moving forward as fast as I can. That river ends up being hugely impeding for me, slowing me down just a little bit, or at least some of the tanks get slowed down to such a significant amount, such as the leader for the SU-122s, that he ends up lagging behind everyone else. But this is generally ideal. You don't want him to get shot at because I don't want to have to put the CIC back to go take care of them. On the northern side, I wiggle around the tree line, careful to line up a couple shots in case they present a target, and on the other side of the board, I start making my way through that river, slowing down the tanks, but otherwise making it such that it's going to buy just a little bit of time for the Totenkopf division. As Der Uber Warrior is in the Totenkopf division down there on the southern end of the board, he is once again forced to move forward, and he's going to get close enough to assault the SMG teams, which is in some ways ideal. He moves them forward as far as he can. He does not bog any of the tanks, much to my dismay, and he begins moving the other tanks on the northern end in such a way to start plugging shots long range, because he needs to start thinning out that horde of tanks on the northern end of the board. Tiger in the middle takes up a defilade position behind the bow cage, getting ready to take shots at the tanks, or at least it's high hedgerows, not bocage, that are coming around the northern end. So you got the 3 Panzer IVs on the northern end and the Tiger on the northern end that are holding down against the 10 T-34s. And on the southern end, you have the 2 Sturm Tigers, which whiff their barrage shot at the T-34s coming through the open. And you have the 3 Panzer IIIs with the Warrior and the Berg Panther recovery vehicle that is currently being proxied with a half-track recovery vehicle that are getting ready to assault the SMG teams on the bottom. They open up with their machine guns and manage to kill 2 stands outright, leaving just 1 stand out there to be assaulted. He goes ahead and assaults. Everything doesn't bog. Everything is just fine. So they move in, swing, and completely annihilate the Spetsnaz on the first turn, making me reconsider ever putting them out there in the first place, because the idea of getting them to bog obviously didn't really work out for me. The Panzer IVs do reconsolidate, and in their move, one of them manages to bog. Fortuitous, right? And then the recovery vehicle immediately begins moving up there in preparation to unbog at the next turn, just in case. Tiger on the northern end does manage to light up one of the T-34s, but for the most part, the fire on the northern end of the board was completely ineffectual. It's the beginning of turn 2, and as the Panzers have moved forward, I am not going to sick those Su-122s in a gun-on-gun engagement with them. The gambit has been set. He's moved his Panzers forward to counter. Now there's an opening in the center of the board, so the Su-122s is going to pull back and allow the short group of T-34-85s to move forward and take on the Sturm Tigers along the center of the board. The Germans have presented themselves a couple of targets. I do the numbers in my head, and I'm engaging some of these tanks 2-to-1, 3-to-1, so I go ahead and stop and take the shots at range, and it pays out as one of the chance shots goes out and nails one of the Panzers, proving that it's okay to stop and shoot every now and then with hidden chicks. And I think this is one of the first few times it really ringed home, or at least it seemed obvious that I should do it. I did the math, it seemed obvious, and I took the shot, and it worked out, taking out a significant chunk of their assets in return for exposing myself just a little bit to the Germans. They have a Tiger tank over there that is going to pay dividends on the center end of the board, but hopefully he will move it out of the way now that I've got the short group of T-34-85s contesting, or at least pushing through the middle in such a way that the Sturm Tigers aren't going to be able to respond to them. And just as soon as his turn comes up, that's exactly what he does. The Sturm Tigers begin moving out, and the Tiger removes itself from its position, having extracted its payment from the larger group of T-34-85s, and moves over to start challenging the other T-34s in the center of the board. The other Panzer IVs actually set themselves up in a defilade position to prevent me from moving further, and also he manages to unbog one of the Panzer IVs and pulls it forward so that they can keep the T-34, the short group, in check. But I saw that coming, so I don't move forward. In fact, I stop the T-34s in the middle. We've got their attention. I'm close enough. They're going to stop and shoot while the CIC begins moving about on his own, moving to open up a flank on the Tiger if he can. And as the center element has stopped to take his shots, and the Su-122s are now once again moving forward now that the Panzer IVs have displaced themselves, the large group of T-34-85s are now moving forward again into the group of Panzer IVs on the northern end of the board. We're keeping him on his toes. We're shifting the balance. One group stops and shoots. The other group begins moving forward. And as that short group makes its shots, a couple of shots can only be taken against the Tiger. I decide to go ahead and chance it. He pops the round off and boom! Kills the Tiger. The CO of the platoon, the short group, managed to take the killing shot, nailing the Tiger and removing a significant threat along the center board. Now the only thing that is holding the center is a couple Sturm Tigers and a flak battery, and to a lesser degree the Panzer IVs on the southern end. Nonetheless, the T-34s opened them up, starting to land round after round after round, killing 2 of the tanks, bailing another. Did somebody say they love that 85mm? Because I do. Against these Panzer IVs, they just don't have the armor to really buck, or at least cause an armor save against them, so I'm just eating it up. It's funny though, I keep trying to take shots at the Sturm Tigers because it seems like the obvious shot, but they have such a huge armor on them, everything would bounce. So the Germans begin moving out of the way of those T-34-85s, and as they do, they manage to bog another of the tanks, and the recovery vehicle moves up to try to pull them out. Sturm Tigers fire again, manage to whiff it completely, not killing anything, but is made up for as one of the Panzer IVs that had to sit in the woods takes his shot and kills one of the T-34-85s. It's interesting to note at this point that we both have had air support, but we keep intercepting it over and over again. Even though at this point he only has one die to intercept with, he has been intercepting everything. Nonetheless, the Sturmovix finally come in, and I go ahead and try to figure out where I'm going to place them. And as I do, it's really narrow because I'm already in his line. So I go ahead and throw the IL-2s over towards the infantry that are protecting the objective on the left side of the board, since I'm going to have to start softening them up sooner or later. The Su-122s begin moving forward. We get up just to the wood line. We're going to try to close that noose. We're going to try to convince some of these bailed tanks, bog tanks, which there are plenty of them in that woods now, to reconsider and just abandon tank and flee. But we have got the pressure on. Even on the northern end of the board, we're moving the T-34-85s into muzzle-to-muzzle range. We are giving them no room to breathe, as we're going to cross the boundary of their ability to wood elf their way out of a proper shot. This most certainly is the do-or-die moment for the Germans, as they are now faced with tanks all up in their lines from every direction, and they really need to do something about that as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they're going to lose the objective on the northern end or the objective on the southern end. But as he does, he also manages to get air support, miracle air support, at the last hour. This is the moment. Crossing the open hills, I decide to group up just a little because he has no artillery and my artillery hasn't been doing anything. So he makes a desperate move. He puts his air in danger close, and then he has to make a series of bog checks to get some of those tanks out of the way, and he just barely makes it. It was real touch and go for a second, but he manages to get everyone outside of 16 inches, and now the game is going to be determined on whether or not that HS-129 is going to do any kind of damage. He comes in, he swings by, I manage to allocate one shot to a valid target, causing him to divert. He moves forward, he loads up with all the cannon shells that he can, but unfortunately he manages to bail just one tank. Oh, it's a disaster. Disaster for the Germans, as the Soviets managed to just barely, by the skin of their teeth, avoid almost complete disaster from an airstrike. Su-122 start mingling through the woods. They're taking their time, taking their shots at the Panzers, mostly whiffing it because the Germans have been just smart enough to stay outside of 6 inches wherever they can. So the shots are few and far between. T-34-85s begin moving forward in the short group on the center. Again, we got to keep the pressure up. Hopefully we can take out another Sturm Tiger as we have in the turn prior. While the larger group of T-34-85s, who have left a series of burning tanks behind them, have made their way so close that it's going to be nothing but side shots and flank shots. We're right on top of them, and we're going to open up with everything we can the next turn, because Hen and Chicks makes his first turn of shooting kind of uneventful. This is it. This is the do-or-die moment for the Germans as they are fighting for their life. They begin maneuvering the Panzers on the southern end in such a way that they can engage the Su-122s, and they do, managing to kill just one of them and be in such a very narrow angle that if I was going to do any return fire the next turn, I would have to move. It was a very smart move. And on the northern end, my buddy starts losing a little bit of heart because he does the math. He looks at what the situation is and he realizes that this next turn, I'm going to get full rate of fire because I'm going to stop and shoot. So if he doesn't cause a platoon morale check or dust off a significant chunk of those T-34-85s, he is going to lose the game, very likely. Now I'm sweating. This is close. I might actually win the game. Now let's talk tactical on this. My buddy threw the game. It wasn't a matter of if I could win, I won. Woo! But I don't play like that. Come on. Because what he didn't realize is that he might not have killed the unit, but he had enough dead to cause a platoon morale check. Never throw the game. Always play it out to the end because they failed morale, even with dead off. Right there. He gets roped into it and everything flees off the board, leaving the entire flank on the northern end delinquent. Oh, that's heartbreaking. So I go ahead and I gotta play for time now. So I move this commander up forward to start engaging the other Sturm Tiger and cause as much damage as possible. He pans his turret around, lights them up. SU-122s do what they can in the woods. He returns by sending the infantry up to deal with the CIC that just managed to fight on by himself, while the group of panzers on the northern end of the board starts blitzing as fast as they can to the northern objective. Oh, this is a matter of time, a matter of life and death. I could still hold on to this if I can just kill one of his platoons, but he's now dusting off the tanks as fast as he can. Another Su-122 dies. He manages to take shots at the Katyushas. The Germans begin assaulting the CIC. 2 stands die to MG fire. I get greedy, and I end up swinging twice and dying to a Panzerknacker team. And with the CIC dead, that's a company rout. Actually, it should have been a company check just a little bit before we got to the assault phase, because the Su-122s would have bailed out. And had I known that the Su-122s would have ran, I would have never have gotten the CIC in there for 2 rounds. But that's been an Ouchies Batrep. Thanks for watching. It's a good guy, great game, and I look forward to playing him again. And I really was sweating at the end. I mean, Insanity Wolf was right there. I was like, man, just take the win, you'll win. But that's not how I roll. No, my play style is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory because it was so close. Oh, sweet dice. 5! Medals for you, my son.